I'm going to ask the question real quickly. How many people in here have done DNA testing? Oh, almost everybody. You guys have it, huh?
No, but that's why we kind of.
Oh, perfect. I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
So most of you know your DNA makeup already, but I'm still going to do this exercise because it's everybody's favorite game. Who do you think you are? Okay? So I have a little form that I'm going to, and if you know already, just go ahead and put your percentages on there. But I'm going to hand these out to everybody. And if you do end up testing, this will be a neat little fun thing for you to test against your actual results. You can put on there what you think your national makeup is. And then when you do get your test done, you'll be able to match it up against that and find out how you fared.
Yeah.
You like the game? Do you want one?
Yeah, no, I already have mine, so.
Okay. So everybody just fill that out real quick. You just tell us what you think your percentages might be. You know, based on what you know about your tree and your family lore, where everybody's from, that kind of thing.
So I have my DNA right here.
If you go ahead and put that in if you want, and you don't even have to do it if you don't want. So I thought it might be fun if we had people that hadn't tested, but wow, we've had a lot of people testing. That's great.
And also my stuff that I know that I have at home. We don't have a lot of family tree, and we've had a couple genealogy,
A couple of starts at it,
a
huh?
couple stars at the people in the family, but I can't even tell you what some of my ancestry is I use.
Well, that's all right.
So,
That's why we do this, right?
Yeah, I think so.
If you think you're German, then put German or Italian or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
I know that I am.
Then just put down what percentage you think, and we'll be on our way. And it's usually, most people find they're not accurate, so don't worry about it. If you get it wrong, it's not a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah, before I did my DNA testing, my percentages would have been a lot different.
A lot different, yeah. Most people do. Most people will put down 100% this, or 50 this, 50 that,
Yeah.
or whatever. Then you get this whole, like, salad of different stuff mixed
See,
together.
when I did my DNA, I had always thought I was mostly German,
Mhm.
and to find out I have some British.
I was not
I was surprised.
German.
It was
My mom was
surprising.
full German, which she isn't doing her DNA, but, you know, supposed to be 100% German. My dad was supposed to be like quarter German. I'm like, yeah, I'm not German. Just a little bit.
Yeah, the one that got me was my Irish is only 2%.
Mm-hmm.
I would have expected it to be a lot more than that.
Yeah. All right, is everybody ready? Oh,
We
go ahead.
did ours, and my sister was one thing and I'm another.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
We'll talk about that. Why there's differences between,
Yeah, because I mean, that's,
unless you're identical twins, siblings aren't even gonna
yeah, I
have the
mean,
exact same.
because it doesn't look like it at all.
Mhm.
And I always thought I was from Scottish, you know, and that doesn't even show up on mine,
Oh,
but it
wow.
does hers.
So well, we'll talk about that. Getting that 50% of each parent, you got different 50%. When your parents. So, all right, is everybody ready for us?
Sure.
Okay, that's just something we can do. We can hang on to it, and then if we want to discuss it a little later, we can. Otherwise, it's something fun to hang on to, especially if you guys end up testing at some point.
Yeah.
You can come back now and look at that and say, wow, that's what I thought on June 10th, and now on July 30th, I know better. or I verified what I already knew, what I thought. So, anyway, why should we care about testing for our DNA? And most people here have done it, so I'll kind of cruise through this though and talk a little bit about some of the reasons we should care. It's a great tool. I mean, there's 3 types of research you can do anymore. You know, there's your traditional research, going to a library, going to the courthouse, writing letters to relatives, family reunions, all that stuff. Then there's the online research, which has really opened things up, where you can go on and find databases full of death records and burial records and well, you name it. Everybody here's probably been online and researched a lot of those things. But then there's also your DNA testing, which is the newest tool. And it allows us to really take our research to places where documents can, where stories from relatives can. You can actually go in and say with scientific proof, I am related to that person in this range of a relationship. Third cousin, second cousin once removed, whatever. And you can actually show it scientifically. Now, you've got to combine that with your own research to show how that relationship matches. Because DNA doesn't say, this DNA belongs to so-and-so. It just shows that you have a DNA relationship. But it also gives you a chance to break through brick walls. Some people who have real serious brick walls beyond just, well, I can't quite find the right record to verify this. People who may have been adopted or had a grandparent who walked away from their family and never talked about them. Those kind of things. Real brick walls where you don't even know somebody's surname. It'll give you those links, give you the opportunity to find those things. So feel free to jump in at any point if you have questions. I did want to cover some terms that I'm gonna be throwing out there during the course of today. And if you've tested, you might already be familiar with most of these. But of course, DNA, everybody knows what that is. Cell, in every cell that we have, there's DNA. But there's 3 sources of information you can get from a DNA sample. And not every testing platform, whether it's Ancestry DNA or 23andMe or MyHeritage or whatever, not all of them test for the same stuff. All of them are going to test for the third one, they're autosomal DNA. And that's the majority of the DNA you have. It's the one that tells you on both sides of your family what genetic makeup you have. Where the Y chromosomal DNA, only men have that. We all remember back to our science class where men have an X and a Y and women have 2 X's. Well, the Y chromosome is the one that men have, and that's the information that's passed down from father to son to son to son to son. It doesn't change a lot over time, not as much as the mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA is passed from a mother to her children. And mitochondrial DNA, both men and women get it. Women get it more completely because they have 2 X chromosomes, where men only get 1 X chromosome. Am I saying that okay? I try not to oversimplify because it's all scientific, and I don't get a lot of the deep background information about it. I'm not a scientist, so. But mitochondrial DNA, everybody has some. It does change a little more frequently over time because so many more differences are coming in from external DNA sources. So, with your Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA though, you're able to trace a helper group. That's the next thing on there. Those allow you to say, I am with this helper group, which has ancestors going back through these countries and through the centuries. Okay? It allows you to track that on your maternal side or your paternal side, if you're male. So that's where Y DNA and mitochondrial DNA come in mostly. Some tests do not test for those. Ancestry DNA does not test. 23andMe does. I can get a Y DNA and a mitochondrial DNA test on I'll show you when I show you mine, but it has that information. To be honest with you, most of the research you're going to do is through autosomal DNA anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much unless those are some things you really want to be able to track, the helper group and stuff. And the thing we're measuring with is called a centimorgan, and that's the little cm you're going to see. It's kind of like, saying a kilometer or that kind of thing. It's the measurement. And you're looking at such tiny, tiny, minuscule, microscopic things that they came up with a separate term of measurement, the centimorgan. So that's going to be the amount of relationship you have to somebody. The more centimorgans you have, the closer related you are. You're going to see a lot for a sibling or a parent, a little less for a first cousin, quite a bit less for a second cousin, and so on. And you'll get down to where you're looking at, maybe 9 centimorgans of relationship with somebody, where you're going to have a couple thousand centimorgans of relationship with a direct sibling or something. Okay, is there any questions about any of those terms? Come on.
Hey, I'm late.
No problem. We're just talking DNA.
I had to swim through the gutter to get
I
here.
hear you. I have to look at my DNA and see what trait I have in my DNA that causes rain to make my hair go crazy.
And it's moisture.
So, what can we learn from this DNA test? Okay, most of you have seen an ethnicity report. Most of you have, literally, because most of you have tested. Have you tested your DNA before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so we have one more person.
I don't know if I want to know.
You can actually look and compare with the other samples in that database what regions of the world your relatives all are centered out of, where your DNA comes from, so on. And that's where they come up with the ethnicity estimates. They'll say you might be 25% English and 50% German and 10% Swedish and so on. That's how they come up with those estimates. That is going to vary quite a bit from test to test because they have different pools of people that they're testing. They have different sizes of samples. Ancestry.com has 24 million people in their database. And the second largest, 23andMe, has like 11 or 12 million. And then after that, it drops off quite a bit more, where they might have 4 million or 3 million people that they're testing with. So their ability to narrow those fields is affected by the number of tests that they're able to sample. So the ethnicity report is the one that is most familiar. Most people look at it and say, look at that. I was totally wrong. I have Russian or Czech or whatever. I never knew it. The migration timelines are available in most of the tests, and it shows where DNA has traveled with certain immigrant groups. My mother's parents were both Germans from Russia. So it shows a migrant group going on a timeline from Germany to Russia, and then a century later over the United States. And it'll track that for you because that DNA pool is pretty consistent. Where they started, where they ended up. You'll also see it with a lot of early colonial arrivals from England. Great Britain, England, Scotland, Ireland. They came in as big groups from the same location, and then they landed in New England, and from there they traveled west to Ohio, from there they traveled west to, Iowa, whatever. And it'll track that for you and show you where those groups, how they moved and how they scattered once they got here and stuff. So there's some really cool stuff with migration timelines. And then most of the tests will give you some kind of health and wellness, tell you personal traits. We were just looking at some of my personal traits before we got started. I still got to check on my hair thing, but it'll tell you most of them will have some sort of personal traits that you can learn about. Some of them lean into it a lot more. 23andMe, for instance, you can get more information about your personal traits and what was the one that we were looking at? Smells or something? I can't remember. But it'll tell you certain things, like you're more prone to have allergies, you're more prone to not go bald or whatever, those kind of things. If you pay a little extra, most of the tests will also give you deeper health analysis because they'll have to run more tests on your sample. But they can tell you if you're likely to develop heart disease and all that kind of stuff. So the health and wellness is a little bit there in most of the tests, but if you pay a little bit more premium, you can get more information. It can help you verify your research, your DNA can. You know, a lot of us have question marks kind of behind some of our ancestors on our tree. We might pull in some information about a great-grandparent and then say, you know, I'm not too sure where they're from, or I'm not too sure who their parents were, but I think this is them. Well, you're able to use your DNA, match up to some cousins and stuff, and go in and basically prove or disprove some of the information you already have in your tree, which is really nice to be able to do. And that's comes to the cousin matching, really. And that's, I think, probably in my eyes, the most valuable part of your DNA testing. You know, we have our estimates of what ethnicity we have and all those things, but really it's the cousin matching that allows us to go in and prove or disprove our research, allows us to find new avenues to research, that kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of reasons you should have your DNA tested, but you know, there's a lot you can learn from it, and it really can help you with your research. So, does anybody have any questions about any of those in particular? Because we are going to go through in a little bit too, and I'm going to bring up some of the tests I've done. I've had 3 different companies that I tested with, and we can show some of the differences between them and stuff.
Can you, if you sign up for one of these testing companies, you can research everybody in the pool, but if you sign up, then you're in the pool, and you don't have any choice about that. You can't say.
You can go in, and there's privacy settings. Every one of these has privacy settings. You can go in and make your results private. You'll still show up in the estimates,
Yeah.
but they won't know who you are.
Good.
And they won't be able to see your family tree, and they won't be able to go in and copy anything from yours. All they'll be able to do is there's like an anonymous contact point where they can send you a message through the DNA service, through Ancestry DNA or something, and say, hey, I see we're related. Would you be interested in talking about, you know, how we're related? And you can send them a message. If you get one of those, you can ignore it. But, or you can turn off messaging. You know, there's a lot of different opportunities to do that sort of thing. There are people who are set against it. They say, I don't want somebody having my DNA in it. Great, don't do it. You know,
Yeah.
would be my answer. I said the other day when I was talking to Kiwanis, you know, if they really want my DNA, all they have to do is follow me out of Starbucks.
Yeah.
You know,
That
so
bad, but
I don't know. To me, it's worth, since this is my passion, it's worth having it out there.
yeah.
And I've had my 23andMe out there for 8-9 years, I think, and it's only been a positive experience for me. So anyway, where to start? Most of you have already done this, so I'm just going to run through this though for those who haven't. You got to find out what you're looking for. Are you looking strictly to research your genealogy? Are you looking to study your possible medical history? Are you looking for your autosomal or your mitochondrial or Y-DNA, those kind of things? Kind of get a sense of what it is you're looking for, because that'll direct you as to which test you want to take. A lot of them are pretty close in price. They are kind of expensive, but right now, for instance, most of them are on sale because Father's Day is around the corner. You don't have to be a dad to go and purchase it. But if you know somebody you want them to test, you've already done it, you can always buy another test and give it to somebody else. I've tested both my parents, both my kids, my wife, and you know, I'm able to use that now to go and I'll show you that as well, to go and really look at where all the different information comes from. You know, I have my dad's test. Well, my grandparents have been gone for decades, but because it's through Ancestry DNA, it'll show which portion of his DNA came from his dad and which came from his mom. Well, now I have half of their DNA identified as well, even though they've been gone for decades. So it's worth paying that little extra price if you have somebody you want to test in your family. And this is a good time to do it. Any holiday, you'll find all the different tests are on sale. Yeah. So But that's what, look at the price, look at the geography you're interested in. Some tests are more popular in the US, some are more popular in Europe or Asia. Ancestry is pretty popular everywhere, but really popular in the US. 23andMe has a lot of popularity in the US, but it's a lot in Europe. So a lot more European data in there. Look at the size of the testing pool. Again, Ancestry.com has, I think it's almost 24 million people in their database, where, the second biggest, 23andMe, has 11 or 12. So that makes a big difference, how many people are in that testing pool. It allows them to narrow things down a lot and really redefine borders around different geographic areas and stuff. And then find out what information is offered, again, if you want to get the, medical tests and those kind of things. 23andMe, for instance, is the only one that offers testing to see how much Neanderthal you have. And most people who are European have some little bit. I have almost 3%. So, and then, like it says, they watch for sale prices. It happens often. It's happening right now through the 18th on Ancestry DNA. You can get it for $59 instead of $99. So, here's the two biggest ones, and some of the pros and cons of them. And I'm not going to go through every single one. I've said a lot of them already, but just by way of comparison, Ancestry DNA does not include your mitochondrial or Y DNA, but you do have the autosomal DNA. And 23andMe, you can get those pieces, and it'll tell you which helper group you are part of on your mother's side or your father's side. But they have a much smaller database, so they're not going to be able to narrow down your geography as much. 23andMe, you can get a real extensive medical report, but you do have to pay a little extra for it. You pay them an additional fee for that. Right now, I had already mentioned, it's $59 on sale for Ancestry. 23andMe is on sale right now for $79. So, the thing about Ancestry too is that Ancestry.com is the world's biggest. They're the 800-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to genealogy. And all their testing is targeted at genealogy. So if you're interested in doing a genealogy site, they're already plugged in. All the tools they have available are there in order to help you achieve your genealogical research, which is really kind of cool. I've done both, and I enjoy looking at both. Okay, so when you get your kit, you order it online. Usually takes a week to 10 days. You'll get it. It'll have either a spit tube or a swab. I think both of the ones I've actually tested like that have been spit tubes. You do it, you put it back in the mailer, and you mail it back. You also take the little card in there, it has a number on it. You'll need to register for a free account with Ancestry.com or with 23andMe so that your results can reach you, because they will email you the results and they'll be available on their website once you go on. So you just sign into your account and you marvel at your superhero genetics that you have. Yes, sir.
Okay, so say I was to have my dad tested, could, rather than setting up an account for him, could it just be put on my account?
I believe so. I'm trying to think of how I've done that with my kids. I think you set up an additional test on your account, but we'll look at that when we go into my ancestry test.
Okay.
That's a good question. Okay, so these are some of the things, and we've talked about most of these already. You get your ethnicity estimate. This is an ethnicity estimate for somebody that I found online. It was just on there, and I copied and pasted it. So, but this is what it'll look like. It'll show you different color regions of the world where your ancestors are likely to have come from. Those areas are going to change. So you're going to want to go back in every once in a while, every 6 months or so, and take a look because there's overlap between all of those. This one is really clean. It shows really crisp regions, but most of them aren't as clean as that once you zoom in. There's a lot of overlap between regions. So there may be times when something says you're from the Netherlands, and then it suddenly might say you're from Germany or from England, because sometimes that overlaps into that Western Europe, little western piece of Western Europe there. So check back, because those things, as they get more and more data, they're going to refine those areas and keep changing the patterns a little bit. And I think if it's been a while since you tested, you've probably seen some of that, where your percentages have changed. She's nodding here, yeah. You've seen it.
Every time I turn around, they're, like I just wrote down a bunch of how they've changed.
Yeah. So it's kind of fun that it keeps changing, but at the same time it's kind of, where did that come from? You know? If you have health and traits on your test at all, that'll be on there, and it'll tell you again if you're prone to have curly hair, or, you know, those kind of fun things. So it is kind of interesting. Through lines is something on Ancestry DNA that I'll show you. That ties your matches, your relative matches, to your family tree. So you'll be able to click on your great-grandfather, and you'll be able to see all the other people that are matched to that person. And you'll be able then to compare their tree to your tree and really measure, you know, the accuracy of your tree against theirs, as well as, because now you say, okay, this is a DNA match. Scientifically, we are both related to this ancestor. This is how it's done, you know, and you can really narrow it down that way. It's pretty neat. Yeah.
And like my daughter, or my granddaughter took hers, and then a few years later, my sister's granddaughter took hers, and they came out that they were related.
Yeah. And it pops up, you know, on
And
your cousin report, your cousin matches. Yeah.
It was fun because the grandchild, you know.
Yeah. And then it'll tell you how many centimorgans, and it'll estimate your what relationship they think you probably have based on the number of centimorgans you have in common. And same with the cousin matches then. And again, like I said earlier, cousin matches to me is the most important part of the research I'm doing, because it says you are related to this person with X number of centimorgans. It's likely that you are either a half-second cousin once removed, or a third cousin, you know, or whatever. It'll give you a range of different relationships that are likely for that amount of DNA that you have in common. Let's see. Okay, ethnicity estimates. And again, this is where it says that you're 25% English and 18% Scottish and so on. Those are going to change. They're going to flex and change and morph into different regions. As hopefully more and more people do this, they'll be able to really define those regions. They might be able to start defining in England different segments of England. Both of my kids have Native American DNA from my wife's side, and right now there's just a giant blob over most of North America, and then another blob that goes through Mexico and up into the southwest part of the U.S., and they kind of overlap a little in the middle, but those are the only two geographic areas that it shows for Native American in North America, which I'm sure at some point they'll be able to start saying, these are Inuits, and these people are Plains tribes, or whatever. You know, at some point when they get enough testing done, they'll be able to start narrowing that field down. So, I would suggest testing with additional companies. Because again, I'll show you the different tests I've done, but it'll give you different results. And you might find that overlap helps you define where they're from. One company might say, okay, this is all of Germany and a little bit of the Low Countries, Netherlands, Belgium, and stuff. Another says you're English, but there's a little bit that laps over the Netherlands and Belgium and stuff. Well, now you might be able to take that and estimate, I think I'm from the Netherlands and Belgium and stuff, based on, you know, the overlap of those different tests. test additional family members. Like I said, my dad's in hospice right now, and we're not gonna have him around much longer. I did test him a couple months ago and got his DNA. And now because of that, I have 100% of his DNA, even though I only carry 50% of it. And I show his heritage from his parents, what he got from each of his parents. So I have him tested, my mom's been tested, both my kids, my wife, her dad. You know, I mean, we've made sure we're really covering all bases, because once somebody's gone, you can't test them anymore, and then you lose that information.
How do they gain all that information from people that have never been tested?
They can look, and again, I'm not a scientist, so this is how I understand it. They can look at your DNA, and because of your 23 chromosomes, they can tell which, if it's on a maternal chromosome or on a paternal chromosome. Basically, when you get your test back, and most of you that have Ancestry DNA have probably seen where it'll tell you parent 1, parent 2. It doesn't even tell you which is your dad, which is your mom, but you're able usually to go in and look based on your knowledge of the family tree, which parent to assign each one. But it'll divide that off of, because every line has 2 different chromosomes going through it, and one chromosome's from your one parent, one's from the other.
Yeah, there's sometimes that I got 2 nieces that are about 50, and they decided they were gonna they tested, and I don't know if it's Ancestry one. They got my sister to test. They found out that who they thought there was their dad, they were raised with, wasn't their dad at all.
Oh, okay.
And I was wondering how they figured that out, because I'm sure their dad, the real dad, and their supposedly dad never tested, but somehow they extracted that information to assure them that the one they lived with their whole life, that was their dad, their mother, you know, was married to, wasn't their dad at all. And I was trying to figure out, well, how they knew all that.
They can probably go into what's called cousin matches, even though some of them are siblings and, you know, aunts and uncles, they just refer to as cousin matches. And they could probably go to that and look for individuals that share that same DNA pool.
Yeah.
And from their information, figure out, this is who the dad is, this is who his parents were, or something like that.
So will they do that all for you, or do you have to
You do that. You do the footwork.
You do the looks and
Yeah.
trying to see what they all mean.
Now, there are experts out there you can hire to do that work for you.
Yeah.
I'm not one of them. So.
One case.
But there are people who can do that, and they'll track. You know, I watch a lot of programs about this stuff on YouTube and on TV and stuff. You know, there's a program on PBS, Finding Your Roots.
Yeah.
Anybody watch that?
Yeah.
And they'll do that sometimes on there. They'll have a celebrity on who doesn't know that there's questions. You know, maybe their parent was adopted or something, and they don't know who their real grandparents were. Well, they have a DNA expert on there that goes through and they find them based on the DNA that's in these databases. So
I know my sister wasn't real happy about their test. I don't know why she tested.
It's a brave new world.
Her daughters talked her into, she had twins, talked her into testing, and I'm sure she wished she'd had it.
and it's a brave new world.
Because they didn't know, you know, that was all secret, so.
Yeah, but in the end, it doesn't matter that it was a secret. I mean, you know,
Well,
to her I'm sure it does, but I mean, you know, to posterity,
yeah.
you know, people are gonna find that stuff out, and then it's gonna be like, oh, well, great grandpa wasn't who I thought it was gonna be. So, I put on here too to use cousin matches, not just your ethnicity estimates. You can go through and you can verify to a larger specific degree where your ancestors came from by looking at your cousin matches who were from that same genetic link to a certain ancestor. And if they show the same migration patterns and show the same family history going back to a particular community or something, you're basically verifying what you already know. So the DNA allows you to do that. And then I guess that last one's kind of the same thing. You combine your DNA research with your actual genealogical research. So Don't just take your DNA and say, well, that's me. You know, you already have a sheet that shows your ancestors on it. Look at each ancestor and verify, okay, do I have anybody genetically who also identifies this person as an ancestor? And you can go through and you can match all that up. Okay, we kind of covered some of this too, like you can track. Basically, you get 50% of each of your parents' DNA. You know, you have 50% DNA you get from your dad and 50% from your mom, but you don't know which 50% you got and which 50% disappeared. If you have siblings, they're likely to have gotten a different 50%. A lot of it will overlap, but there'll be also some little segments that is different. And I think several of us have expressed that before we got started here. You'll find that you can, even if you don't have a DNA sample from your parent that you can submit, you can test siblings and come up with a pretty complete picture of your parents' DNA, because they're going to have different segments than you are. If you have a lot of siblings, you probably can nail the whole thing, figure out, you know, the entire genetics for each of your parents. I have 5 siblings, there's 6 of us. I have 1 that's tested on Ancestry, 1 that's tested on 23andMe, 1 that's tested on MyHeritage. I'm like, let's just all test on the same platform so we can get all the same base of results, and then we can compare. So I'm probably gonna have to buy them all tests at some point. Have to wait for another holiday and buy a bunch of them. But it'll give you a complete picture. That's why you want to test additional people in your family. My kids both show different results based on me and my wife. They're both genetically our kids, but they are different. And that's how siblings work. You know, we all have a little different look. We all have a little different height or weight or whatever. And that comes back to genetics that we inherit. And that is different from your siblings. You might identify different genetic cousins. I did my dad's DNA. I have on my Ancestry DNA about 24,000 people, I think it is, that I have been linked to as genetic cousins. My dad has like 54,000 people that show up on his test. So there's another 20,000 people there that I don't get in my test because he has a more extensive DNA that I inherited from him. So there's a whole 50% of his DNA that allows him more contacts. So I'm gonna dig into his genetic cousins a little deeper now, because it's an additional tool for me to use to find out relatives from my dad's side. Yes?
Yes, I have a cousin that had hers done on Heritage, and I did mine on Ancestry. And she said, put yours on Ancestry, or on Heritage, and so you I don't know, take them all.
That's what I did for Heritage too.
Yes, and I get a lot more stuff from Heritage.
Oh, really?
Yes. From
See, I don't get nearly as much from my Heritage. I have a few thousand people on my Heritage, and I have 20-some
I almost every other day I get something on my email that you have a relative, you know.
What she's mentioning is that Ancestry.com, they kind of do their own thing. They're the big dog in the fight. They have the ability to kind of survive on their own. But there are a few companies. MyHeritage does it. Well, Ancestry DNA, not Ancestry DNA. What's it called? Family DNA.
Family Search.
Families. Yeah, there's several of them that you can go into your Ancestry DNA or your 23andMe, download your raw data, and transfer it into their database. And MyHeritage, I think it was $29 for me to get results from them by transferring my information from one database to the other. And now I have it in those 3 databases and 3 different pools of information.
So the reason I suppose I get more is because I have a subscription with both.
Oh, yeah.
And otherwise I was, you know.
Yeah, see, I don't have this,
But-
my heritage subscription.
And I get a lot more information from them.
The other thing is, people see their DNA, and they might get interested in what you're doing, what genealogy is about. I don't know about a lot of you, but I'm the primary genealogy nut in my family, and getting other people interested in it has been a challenge. So, having your DNA tested though, it causes people to stop and look at the report, and then say, well, wait a minute, how can I be 15% Irish when I didn't even know we had an Irish ancestry? And they start digging into it a little bit, and now you have a partner, you know, in doing your family
And that's
history.
what's fun. It's
So,
all fun to do it by yourself.
Getting other people involved is fantastic. And DNA testing might accomplish that. I think we've covered a lot of this. Cousin matches. One thing that I'll show you what I've done with mine is sorting your cousin matches into groups. I'll go in and there's, in Ancestry DNA, and I'm going to spend a lot of time in Ancestry DNA just because that's where I'm most familiar once we start going through it. But you can go in and look at your common relatives that are in your database. So if you open up a third cousin or a fourth cousin, and then there's a button that says show shared matches. Everybody that shares with you and that cousin are all related to the same person. They're all in the same family pool. And you can set up little colors that you can assign to each of your grandparents or each of your great-grandparents. And as you find relatives that are assigned to those, you can actually pool them into little clusters that you can say, okay, this is from the Smith side, these people are all from the Jones side, these people are all Johnsons, or whatever it is. It's a neat tool. I'll show that when we get to it. The other thing is bad research is bad research, whether it's in your tree or somebody else's, or in both. And sometimes it'll show you, yes, you're both related to this person. Well, if you're both using the bad research to identify that person, it's still bad information. So you want to still make sure you're maintaining vigilance with your tree. Make sure you're still finding, you know, primary source documents, that kind of thing, to verify, yes, I am related to this person, and then using the DNA as verification of that. I don't know if I said that very clearly or not. One thing I like to do, and this is a little trick I made up myself, count the G's to see which cousin you are. Okay? If you have a first cousin, it means you share a grandparent, right? That's one G, grandparent. If you have a second cousin, you share a great-grandparent and great-grandparent. Fourth cousin is going to be third great-grandparent. So if you need a little device in order to count how you might be related to somebody, that's a fun one for me to use. I count the G's. So, you know, grandparent, first cousin, great-grandparent, second cousin, great-great, third cousin, so on. And then, of course, you get the once removed and twice removed and all these fun things. So you'll get really good at figuring those out once you start doing your cousin matches. And then identify your through lines. Through lines is something we'll look at, but it's through Ancestry DNA that it sorts everybody by your actual ancestors in your tree. And it'll allow you to go in and look at other people who have identified a certain ancestor that are also genetically linked to you. Okay.